Welcome to Now in the 90s, where we look at the game releases of 30 years ago today. This week, the ever-growing mascot race, the next sim game, and some seasonally appropriate spookums. Hi, I'm your host Jared, and today is October 27th, 1993. When numerous others have failed to stand up to the big boys, what's stopping it from trying it for yourself? Released in October 1993 for the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo, was Aero the Acrobat.
From Sunsoft on Super NES and Sega Genesis. Bite me!
Aero the Acrobat is a mascot platformer. Play as Aero, running and jumping through numerous levels. Aside from the usual, you can also do a dive maneuver for extra distance upward or downward and as an attack. Rather than getting to the end of each stage, instead you have an objective on each level, such as collecting items, landing on platforms, or going through every ring. Every now and then you'll fight a boss, ride a minecart, or in the SNES version, do some Mode 7 gliding. Get to the end and defeat the evil industrialist, Edgar Ector. Aero the Acrobat was developed by Iguana Entertainment, who you best know for working on games like NBA Jam and Turok Dinosaur Hunter. It was published by Sunsoft, who's had some great games before like Blaster Master or the NES Batman game, but they've never had a mascot to call their own. Enter Aero. He was originally conceived by David Siller in 1992, who showcased his original design documents to the website combo.com. He explains that Aero was always conceptualized to be a bat and was inspired by the Namco arcade game Mappy. David liked the trampolines and springboards and developed a full game based around those concepts. It was also intended to be on the NES, but by the time he got around to actually developing it, it was clear that the Genesis and SNES were the way to go. Aero the Acrobat was first debuted to the public at the beginning of 1993 during the Winter Consumer Electronics Show. He was used as the cover character for the Sunsoft catalog from the show, and you can see his unrefined, unfinished design. He was also put onto the cover of the Summer Consumer Electronics Show for 1993, as well as having a playable build at the show where his game was highly received and deemed more impressive than most other games at the show floor. Now, of course, it's the 90s. Aero the Acrobat was another new mascot platformer going into a crowded space. He had to compete with the likes of Sonic and Mario, plus a slew of other all-new mascots in 1993 alone. Rocky Rodent, Cool Spot, Awesome Possum, Bubsy. Sunsoft had a plan. They hyped up Aero by announcing that he is the new face of Sunsoft, becoming their official mascot. They got aggressive with their advertising. He was put onto the cover of Electronic Gaming Monthly issue 49. Nintendo Power held a multi-page preview for it, including it being on the back of issue 54's pull-out poster. Magazine advertisements were pages with Aero bursting through it, with words in the background detailing the story of the game. Secretly, however, within those words was a paragraph telling readers that if they're one of the first of 100 people to send in a postcard, they would get a free copy of Aero the Acrobat for the system of their choice. It was used to build playground rumors about getting a free game. Kinda like those stars on the wrappers of Tootsie Pops. Now, of course, what mattered most was how it was received. Reviewers of the time were very high on it. Electronic Gaming Monthly awarded it an average score of an 8.25 out of 10 with the Editor's Choice Gold Award. They graded the Sega version slightly lower since the music wasn't as good. GamePro magazine gave it a 4.25 out of 5, saying it isn't perfect, but it's worth the price. Nintendo Power was surprisingly the lowest with a 3.5 out of 5 average score. However, EGM did go on to name Aero the Acrobat as the best new character of 1993. These days, Aero the Acrobat is seen as just fine. Nothing to write home about, but nothing great either. It was one of those games back in the day you'd be fine renting if all the other cooler games were already checked out. It did do well enough that it would get a direct sequel with Aero the Acrobat 2 in 1994. One of the villains of the game would also get his own spin-off, Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel. The first game would also get ported onto the Game Boy Advance in 2002 and onto the Wii's Virtual Console in 2010, where we haven't heard from Aero ever again since. They've done the city, the earth, and the farm, and now they're thinking small. Released in October 1993 for the Super Nintendo, was SimAnt. SimAnt is a simulation management game about ants. Play as a worker ant, a soldier ant, or a breeder to expand the colonies of the black ant colony and defeat the red ants. Wander around to collect food, get into battles with red ants, and summon allies to take down larger bugs for more food. Eventually breach into the human household and overrun it with so many ants, the humans are forced to run in terror. Watch out for hazards such as people walking, a lawnmower, the electrical outlet, and of course, the ever horrifying spider. SimAnt was developed and published by Maxis, and is another brainchild of legendary developer Will Wright, the same guy who brought us SimCity, SimEarth, and The Sims, and Spore. It was originally on computers in 1991 and then ported to SNES in 1993. The Super Nintendo version has some differences, mostly in the graphics and sound department. It's also another one of the few SNES games that can use the SNES mouse. However, the most fun thing of the computer versions is missing. You cannot play as the spider at all. SimAnt wasn't exactly hyped up, but it did get a fair amount of previews. This was mostly because of the name recognition with how popular the SimCity games were, though many people were quick to point out that SimAnt is more on the educational side. Still, it was enough for Nintendo Power to give it a 4-page preview, sandwiched between Aero the Acrobat and Secret of Mana. As for actual reviews for SimAnt, we could find only one. GamePro magazine generally liked the game, but obviously stated how it can be slow-paced and lacking on action since, ants. Surprisingly, even though Nintendo Power has historically previewed a new release and then reviewed it in the same issue, this time around, they never reviewed SimAnt. The SNES port of SimAnt is the last time we ever saw it. It never got re-released again. And with Maxis completely out of business, the SimAnt games are now considered to be abandonware. We realize it's Halloween weekend now, so we got your spooky game covered. Released at the end of October 1993 was Haunting Starring Polterguy for the Sega Genesis. Haunting is a real-time strategy game, kinda. Play as Polterguy and do everything you can to scare the family out of the house. Possess nearly everything in the house from furniture to doors to electronics. Run out of ectoplasm and you'll need to escape the underworld to get back to the house. Increase each person's fear meter until they run out screaming from house to house to house. Plus, do it all in 2-player co-op. Haunting Starring Polterguy was developed and published by Electronic Arts. This was still in the era of Electronic Arts wanting to create original, unique titles for the Sega Genesis, which has already resulted in games like Desert Strike, Mutant League Football, and Road Rash. Also, in a year of controversial video games and things like too much violence for the children, Haunting Starring Polterguy was overlooked. Some of the frights you can perform are surprisingly graphic. Things like bleeding eyeballs, floating skulls, couches exploding into blood, blood-filled bathtubs, and literally making the people pee themselves from being so scared. It has just enough of the 90s edginess, with Polterguy being a totally radical dude and the magazine adverts for it leaning a little into that gross-out style humor before gross-out humor really became a thing. Reviewers liked it, but didn't love it. GamePro magazine awarded it a 3.6 out of 5, mostly disliking how short it was. Game Fan magazine graded it with a 78%, calling it only fun for younger players with, quote, less discriminating tastes. Still, these days, Haunting Starring Polterguy is considered a Sega cult classic, a unique concept that was far ahead of its time. The only time it ever got re-released was on the EA Replay Collection for the PlayStation Portable in 2006, and you could argue that its innovative gameplay design lives on to this day thanks to titles with similar premises like Untitled Goose Game. And haunted by all the other releases of the week, here's Editor Dylan.
What? Haunted? I gotta get out of here. That could only mean one thing. The door's locked! Hey! Open up! Before it's too late!
There's only
God,
one
not
guy
you.
to kick off this game.
Thanks for the
Oh, no, not
handout,
him.
Joe. But I
Please
think a
don't make me do
screen
it.
pass would be better.
Anything but that! Don't
Hey,
say it!
team,
No!
Are you ready for some football?
No! Open up, please! Please have mercy!
180 with 4.5 speed, the last thing you want is to run into somebody 260 with 4.5 speed. Madden NFL 94 for Sega Genesis and Super NES. 80 teams and bigger, faster players to leave chasing your caboose. If it's in the game, EA Sports.
Challenge everything.
NHL 94 for Sega Genesis and Super NES. One-timers, cold streaks, oh yeah, hot streaks. If it's in the game, EE.
Daffy Duck the Marvin missions released for the Super Nintendo. And if you've seen the cartoons this game is based on, you might be thinking, shouldn't it be Duck Dodgers from the 24th and a half century, the Marvin missions? And it turns out, this repetitive side-scroller is just a stage play starring Daffy as Duck Dodgers, which is a little more unique than you'd typically get. It's nothing too new or engaging, but give it a try if you like what you see. And if you don't like what you see, well then I hope you like
NBA Showdown 94 for Sega Genesis and Super NES. If it's in the game,
Family Feud came out for the Genesis SNES, and you already know exactly how it plays. What else can I say that hasn't already been said about it? Let's just do a quick game and get it over with. Name a Christmas gift that's impossible to wrap. I am so beyond sleep deprived at this point, I'm just gonna type in comment, like, and subscribe so I can get a game over and move on. What? I won? Wait, what? Car? Yeah, car, totally. Wait, I forgot what I was doing. I'm trying to lose. So as I was saying, make sure to subscribe, like, and comment so I can just lose and move on. Bicycle? What is happening? Is this game actually haunted? Or is this entire segment cursed? Alright. If it happens this time, I'm gonna give out 90 Steam codes. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And... okay, it was just a coincidence. No Steam codes this time. Well, hang on, why don't I try a bunch of random numbers and letters? Alright, this has gone on long enough, so I'll just say what I know in my heart of hearts and get a game over to move on. Sports games are stupid. And survey says... yes! Oh my god! You can't, I mean, the people have spoken, you can't argue with the facts. Speaking of stupid.
NFL Football 94 starring Joe Montana features an all-new passing game, speed bursts, and real players. So how far did Sega go to understand these real players? Maybe too far. NFL Football 94 from Sega Sports. Sega!
16 games released on these consoles this week in 1993. I looked into it, and it turns out the SNES version of Family Feud has a bug in it. As long as the correct letters appear in sequential order, it'll still count as a correct answer. So if the answer was pet, then in my guess, sports games are stupid, it just reads from left to right looking for P. Don't laugh at that. Once it's spotted, it continues reading until it finds an E, and so on. And before you sound off in the comments, I'm just having a bit of fun with the spooky season. I don't actually hate sports or sports games, and I'm genuinely happy for you if you love them. But it was nice getting a break for a little while.
I'm glad it was easier for you this week.
And I'm glad you're covering the next football game that comes out. Happy Halloween, everyone!
Hey, thank you, Dylan. Here in the collector's corner, Aero the Acrobat didn't fly high. It released costing $54.95. The SNES version can be found for just $11 for the cartridge and only up to $50 for a complete in-box copy. The Sega version fares worse, with it only being $9 loose and $30 for a complete one. SimAnt has only been decent. With a release price of $59.95, it can now be found for $30 for the cartridge. Get the box and manual for it, and it'll go up to $80. Haunting Starring Polterguy is obscure enough to retain its value. It had an MSRP of $49.95, and the cartridge is still worth $40. A complete copy is currently going for $98. And that's it for today. Next week, one more mascot platformer, an FMV game, and another Capcom Disney classic. I'm your host, Jared, and this was Now in the 90s. Thank you so much for watching Now in the 90s. We've gotten a lot of new patrons recently, and I want to thank some of the new ones, such as Rachel Stantz, Asriel Knight, and Johnny Hubs. Please like the video and leave a comment down below, especially if you played any of the games that we mentioned this week, and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you already are a subscriber, thank you so much for watching the show every single Friday. I already did a full video on SimAnt over on my main channel, but this is another one of those weird childhood games that I loved. And I only rented it because it had the word Sim in the title, and I loved SimCity, so that worked on me.